Welcome. It is a nighttime recording of episode 6, I think this is, of my trip to Europe. So thanks for taking a look. This is Corsica. Wow, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of up and down. So let me do a screen share here. Here is the screen share. There it is, Corsica. And let's do just a short review. This is the trip. The earlier episodes started out in Groningen in Holland, Houghton, Freiburg, Strasbourg, Paris, Villa d'Azzi, and Barcelona, Côte d'Azur, northern Italian lakes. That was the most recent episode, was Como, Grata, and then Cinque Terre. That's where we ended up last time, was from here to here. So now we're going to go across the little bit of the Tyrrhenian Sea here to Corsica. It's not very far. You can see the scale here. It was about a 4-hour ferry ride, nice ferry ride. And that ferry took me to Bastia. I've been to Bastia before, but let me just mention a little bit here. This is Corsica, this is Sardinia. The final 2 episodes will be Sardinia. We'll be doing those after Corsica. But of course, this is mainland Italy here. This is Spain over here, France here, all that, the Mediterranean. But I just want to share a little bit of the geology of this place. Italy is very much a very active bit of real estate. There's volcanoes, there's earthquakes. It's known for that. Previous episode, I described how Italy was its own small tectonic plate, and it kind of bulldozed up into southern Europe, and the Alps is the, if you will, the debris in front of the bulldozer. That's what the Alps are here. Pretty beautiful debris, as a matter of fact. But Corsica and Sardinia are a totally different geological story. They are not part of really the geology of Italy. They don't have earthquakes and volcanoes in Corsica and Sardinia. It's a very different story. If you look at this coastline here of both Corsica and Sardinia, and just kind of imagine you sort of pivot that over to here, this zone right here fits this zone right here even better when you're underwater, because this Corsica and Sardinia used to fit over here, and over the past quite a number of millions of years moved from here and being oriented this way to moving here and more oriented north and south, because the geology here fits the geology over here. For example, Alghero, which does have a local dialect that's similar to Barcelona. That actual location used to be close to Barcelona millions of years ago, and of course that dialect moved from colonists from Barcelona to this part of Sardinia only 400 or 500 years ago. So it's interesting that the culture caught up with the geology. I think that's pretty fascinating. So anyway, I just find that amazing that this Corsica and Sardinia used to be over here a long time ago. So we'll start out. I left Livorno on the ferry. This was about 4 hours or so to go from here to here. And And this is the scale here, 10 miles. So of course, this is Corsica, gives you an idea of the size of Corsica. It's pretty good size island. And actually, right around in here, there's Montecinto, which is something pushing 9,000 feet, 3,000 meters in elevation above sea level. This is pretty up and down countryside. I've been here before. I've been along this West Coast before many years ago, and I wanted to do it again. And the previous time I'd been in Corsica, I went into the interior. It's really nice and green. There's lots of pine forests, lots of creeks and rivers and mountains. It's really rugged. Corsica's rugged almost everywhere. But this trip, I just stayed along the coast. And of course, this orange indicates bike riding. A good part of this I did with the bicycle that I had. I started here in Bastia, uh, camped out a night. We'll get to that. Another night here, I stayed a couple nights in Calvi. I really like Calvi, and camped out in another campground here, Lake Calanche, some really particularly beautiful rock formations. Cargays, I've been in Cargays before. I camped out there, and Calcatoggio. This will be a great story because I have some history in Calcatoggio, and we'll get to that shortly. And was here at a campground in Calcatoggio. Gee, I think I was there 5 days. What a fun time that was. And then down here to Propriano and stayed a night in Propriano. And then from Propriano, I actually took a bus with my bicycle to Bonifacio. I didn't want to bike this. The road's too busy for that. So the X's indicate places I stayed the night. So that's the short story here. Let's go to, this is actually Livorno. This is still Italy. Here's my bike. Here's the ferry, pretty good size ferry. It can accommodate quite a few cars. And as it turned out, right up here, you can see some chairs and actually some people. I actually ended up spending a good deal of time once we were out on the water. This is where I hung out right here. And this is getting ready to load onto the ferry. And what you see right here was where I just pointed out on the ship. I had a table here. This was a German couple. I ended up having some nice conversation with them. Just about everybody's on holiday here. So this is the cruise ship. So we got out into the open water, and Livorno kind of faded off into the distance. You're actually out for several hours on the open ocean. It's not rough. It's like a big lake, actually. And time for a nice bit of a lunch. I had bought all kinds of good stuff for my lunch. And of course, there's the Frisbee right there, and looking out on the open Mediterranean, you can see it's not very rough. That can be very different. This could be big waves here if there was a storm, but in the summertime, it's generally fairly easy going. And after a while, you arrive to Bastia. This is Bastia here, and you can see these are the mountains of Corsica right here. And I've been here before. I've done this before, and I knew that immediately in Bastia, you start going uphill. You go up over some of these mountains. You don't go up as high as this here, but you go up plenty high. I remembered that it was a good climb. It was a big climb going out of Bastia. I didn't remember really how big it was. So this is Bastia here, and here's the Med. This is only a fraction of the way up the slope. The actual highest elevation that you go to is something over 500 meters, 1600 feet. that's a big climb. And of course, I couldn't ride up that on my bicycle. I pushed my bicycle almost the entire way. And when I arrived in Bastia, it was very late in the day, and I had to find a couple of maps, get a little bit of food. And so by the time I actually pushed the bike out of the urban area, it was actually starting to get a little bit late in the day, and I didn't have a lot of water with me. And finally, I stopped here at this house, which was just right next to the road. I needed water because I knew I was going to need to camp out, and I didn't have as much as I wanted. I rang the doorbell. I think that's what this is right here. And this fellow, I think he had an accident, but really nice guy, and didn't speak English. And I don't speak much French, but we managed to communicate pretty easily. You can figure out how to make your needs known. All I wanted was some water. I had some containers. So he was really helpful. He and his wife got me some water, and they even gave me some fruit to take along. So he wanted to get a picture of me with my bike, which I accommodated, and I got a picture of him. Just a really nice guy, nice place, just right off the road. So I had the amount of water I wanted to have with me. So I walked another half an hour, and by this time it was starting to get not dark, but it was sunset. And what I found was a really nice place to hang up my hammock in this just a short ways off the road. This was a really nice spot. Of course, there's lots of options for the hammock here. So I spent the night there, and it was a good night. So the next day, it was more climbing. I probably walked something, pushing the bike, I'm sure somewhere between 3 and 4 hours to get to the top of this hill. And now you can see the Mediterranean way down here. I would think Bastia is kind of back this way. I turned the bike around to get this shot. So actually the bike is headed towards Bastia. I'm actually going in the other direction. But here you can see the road, and it just does its slow increase in elevation. And finally I got to the top. And then this is the Mediterranean way down here. I pushed the bicycle from this elevation way down here to where I am up here. And this was an historical monument. And I can read the French. I can read French pretty good if it's not complicated. And this was a an artillery position in World War II. And what this is not French here. I don't know what this is. This may be Corse. This is probably a local dialect. I don't know what this is saying at all right here. I don't know what that is. It might be Corse. It doesn't look anything like Sardo in Sardinia. I don't know what this is, but it's also written in French. But the French had cannons up here, and they used it to try to defend the pass from the invading Germans. Just a real interesting story. And of course, here's the I don't know if that's the actual cannon they used, but it is a cannon. And I had a little bit of lunch up here. I was so glad to get to the top of this hill. It's probably one of the biggest ones I had in Corsica. There were several other big grades pretty similar to this, but I didn't have anything that was larger than this. So this is going down the other side. And again, you can catch a little bit of a view of the Mediterranean here. You're rarely out of sight. I was rarely out of sight of the Mediterranean on this bike ride, but just look at this. It's just beautiful. And this was, of course, the downhill. I had a long ways to go downhill. This was great fun. And then this is one of the first small towns. I forgot the name of this place, but I came from back over this way. Bastia is back over this hill, back over that way. And I felt like, well, I'm really in Corsica now. And I was biking and I ran into these people. This gal here is from Italy and he was from England, and everybody's talking English. So they were doing a little touring on this small motorcycle, and we ended up having a chat for quite a while. They were really good fun. So this is the first place that I stayed in a campground in Corsica. Very nice campground. Here's they have a cafe. There's a swimming pool. They have a little store, and it's close to a beach. I went down to the beach and did some swimming. Very pretty. I took down my hammock. I'd already taken my hammock down, but this was my campsite right here. I'm actually in the process of leaving. But just about all the campgrounds I stayed in Italy and France had Wi-Fi, so I was able to pretty much keep in touch with my laptop right there. So I left that location, and actually, this is the beach, which was accessible from that campground. And Ile de Rue, probably I don't pronounce that right, but that's the next town I'm going to. But this is just pretty much following the contour along the Mediterranean. As you can see, it's really rocky. This area here is granite. This is granite rock right here, of course. And recall this all this area here has traveled quite some distance from where it used to be there along the coast, the northeast coast of Spain. So this is Ile de Rue, actually back here, but this is Mediterranean landscape. It's very warm. It is a dry summer. In the wintertime, you probably would not have a freeze here very often. I'm sure it can freeze here, but not very often. It's a very mild climate. Of course, there's palm trees and bougainvillea, citrus. I'm sure they can have a freeze now and then, but not very often. And then as I was approaching Calvi, I saw this basically kind of a garage sale. It's this big open area, and all these cars and people are just selling garage sale kind of stuff. So I just pulled in and walked around a little bit just to see what was there. I parked my bike over here. The lady here said, "Can I sell your bicycle?" I said, "I want to keep my bicycle." That was pretty funny. So I didn't see anything that looked particularly valuable there. It was just real garage sale kind of stuff. So I came into Calvi, and this is Calvi here. This was that campground where I went to the beach, and that's what I just talked about, just this little area right along here. And I'm just coming into Calvi right now. And there's a very ancient, old structures in Calvi up on this hilltop that kind of an old fort. And I went up there. I like high places. Earlier in the day, I went across the front of this mountain over here and then gradually downhill. And then somewhere over here is where that garage sale stuff was. But I went all the way along here and then down. So this is kind of a big sort of a gulf right there. I stayed in Calvi a couple of nights. And just by good luck, they were having a jazz festival. And it was free. And it was just out in this parking lot. This mountainside is the same as you saw in the picture before. But here's this gulf here. And this was actually some really nice jazz music. There were some people dancing. I liked it really well, kind of swing type jazz. Nice setting right here. and the town of Calvi is just a little bit off to my right there. This is Calvi, and the kind of fort and old area. Of course, this used to be up on the hill because it was more defensible up there. And I did a little bit of walking around up here as well. We'll see a few pictures of that. But this is down here on the harbor. This is earlier in the day. Later in the day, this place is just packed. There's people walking, and these are all restaurants all along here. It's really, really pretty, very pretty. This is kind of bordering on what you would call a super yacht. I'm sure this yacht here, which I was closer to earlier, I'm sure was a good 60, 70 meters long, 200 feet long. It was bigger than a cabin cruiser. It was pretty big. Almost all these places had some big boats, and the French are very fond of boats. I kind of thought to myself, gosh, I think everybody in France has got a boat down here somewhere. So here is up on that hilltop, these just really nice kind of narrow walkways. I think probably some people live up here. There was a little cafe. I had a beer up here. It was really nice just to kind of walk around. I love places like this, just beautiful. And this is the campground where I stayed. They had, of course, a little cafe and a little store. And where I stayed was kind of back behind here, a little playground. There was a swimming pool, very nice campground. This was a great place. Had Wi-Fi. I stayed here a couple of nights, and there's my bike. I am, yeah, that's me leaving, but I'm not leaving yet. I still have a few more pictures of Calvi, a little out of order there. This is kind of what some of the sanitary services are at a typical campground in Europe. Of course, there's lots of sinks. It was pretty quiet. It's still a little early in the season, so there weren't too many people. These are all showers, and they have toilets, and all very nice, very, very clean. Everything's cleaned up every day. And again, the cost at a campground was generally 18, 20, $22, 22 euros per night. So it was very affordable. And it's just nice, to have the water and to get cleaned up and know that your stuff is pretty safe. So here's the beach, and this is Calvi across the bay here. And this is closer to where the campground was. The campground was actually a good 15, 20-minute bike ride, to get to Calvi. The campground I stayed was actually back over to my left, but lots of people. This is not a crowded beach. Right here, the water was nice. Still a little early in the season, but the water's plenty good for swimming. So one evening, I biked into town, and I really like to have a picnic, a mobile picnic, and just find some cool place to have dinner. And what I found here was this big breakwater for their harbor, and this windsock right here. And this would be a light that comes on at night. And I sat up here and had all my great, wonderful bread, fruit, cheese, and had a wonderful, great picnic right here that evening. I went off over here and had a little bit of a swim, and over here on the right, there's is the harbor, and it became time to leave. So here I am. This is kind of the main street in Calvi, and these are oleanders right here. There's just oleanders everywhere in the Mediterranean. They're just beautiful. I really like oleanders. They're kind of semi-tropical. They can take a freeze, but they don't like it so cold. But these are really typical of the Mediterranean, just beautiful. They're like little trees. So this is the main street, and I am on my way out of Calvi, and I'm really excited because I know I'm going to be seeing some really awesome scenery and being away from town, kind of getting out in the country. So this is leaving Calvi. This is a little peninsula that I went out on the day before, but I'm heading out of town. It's a little bit of an uphill, but this is bikeable right here, and uh, I am on my way, and and then this is, of course, a highway sign, 150 kilometers to Ajaccio. And I will be going through Ajaccio, actually. I think the French say Ajaccio, more Italian, Ajaccio. I'll be going through Porto, but these are kilometers right here. And you go around this corner and you go another quarter mile and you leave town behind. We'll see what that looks like here. The next photo. This is really pretty. Just look at this right here. I am screaming right here at this point. I'm just shouting. I'm just so excited to be along here. It is so beautiful. You're up, oh, 100 meters up above the water, and it's just rocky. And for quite a long time, you don't see any towns. This is not the main road to go from North Corsica to South Corsica. I did see a couple bike riders along here, and a little traffic, a car, every 15 or 20 minutes. So it's not without other people, but it's pretty quiet. It's really nice bike riding. So this is another picture right here. I just would love to have gone down here and gone snorkeling. Wow. Just look at that water down there. It's really, really rocky. And this is just the kind of scenery I was seeing for much of the day. And went a little bit inland. This is somebody's, wouldn't really call it a farm, but somebody lives here, and these are citrus trees and maybe some olives and some fruit. Maybe they might even have apples. Certainly they would have some grapes here, but this is somebody's little farm. And here is the mountains right around there. I think the road was back over here and kind of made a big loop, a little bit of an unusual flat space right there. And then this is a little bit further along, and it's just a gorgeous bridge. I just had to take a picture of that bridge. And up on these ridges, there were some windmills also, big windmills, big electricity windmills as well. So they're working on that also to generate some electricity. Somewhat later, I kind of gone down and gone up. Um, this was another hill climb. You see right here, that's the road there, and the road started way down here. It was very warm. I'm sure the temperature was mid to upper 80s, not super hot, but plenty warm. And by the time I made it up to here, I was feeling like I had enough exercise. And a little bit further along, here's the road over here. It's just rugged. And usually, most of the time, you're kind of on the contour, but you do have to go up and down a fair amount. And here and there, you'll find a source of water. If it's like this, the water's good enough to drink. This is where I filled up. I really, wash off a little bit. It was always a real nice relief to see this. Of course, I carried water with me. I always had water, but it was nice to refill. And of course, this would have been nice and cool. I never had any consequence from any sort of bad water or anything. I never did. This was always, and for sure, this is spring water right here. It's great. And this is further along. What yeah, this I end up going over in this area here. I had to follow the contour and go way back behind this ridge here. That would actually be the next day, but I went up in this area here, in that little town Porto is kind of back up this inlet here. But I am getting late in the day, and these goats were just there. I thought, wow, that's kind of neat. There's some goats there, and but very little traffic. And just off to the side, to the right, would be the Mediterranean down 100 meters below. It's just all these kind of hairpin turns, very little traffic, and just beautiful. Just a great place for bike riding. This day, it was late in the day, and I knew there was a campground very close by, but I also knew the campground was down at water level. And if I wanted to go to the campground, I had to go down about 1,000 feet in elevation. And what I decided to do is I would, and somehow when I go down to this campground, I would find somehow to get a ride back up to the road because I didn't want to push my bicycle up 1,000 feet in elevation. So I did go down to the campground, and this is the campground. A little bit further down was the beach. So I had a good time here. Hung up my hammock and had some chat with the people who owned the campground. And I did find somebody who took me up to the road the next day because I didn't want to start my day off. It would have taken me 2.5, 3 hours to walk from here back up to where the road was. And interestingly, that next morning was a stormy morning. It was kind of like a squall came through. The wind came up, and there was even some lightning. And when I was being taken up to the road, it was raining some. I didn't know how long this was going to last, but you can see these clouds coming over the top of that ridge right here. And the place where I'm headed later in the day is kind of lost back way over here. And the clouds, I did get a little bit of rain gear out. It didn't rain a whole lot, but it was windy and kind of turbulent there for the morning. And by this time, the rain had stopped and it was starting to clear off. And of course, later it did turn out to be a warm day. But this is Lake Calanche. I have indicated on my map right here. This is really pretty. But I continue along this contour and I go down to Porto, and then I go back up another 12 or 1,400 feet to get up into this area here. But that is the way it works. And this is a little bit further along. Porto, that town is just back in here. And you can see this is the road. Well, as long as it's on the contour and you're not having to go up or down, it's really wonderful to be on these roads. And this is up in that ridge, that mountain, Lake Calanche right here. It's a pretty popular destination. Just these beautiful rock formations, and you're even up higher. You're more like 800, 1,000 feet above the Mediterranean. You go down to Porto, which is at sea level, and then you got to go back up again. Once again, I'm going, God, when am I going to get to the top of this? So I am up here in the Calanche, and these steep ravines and this kind of Mediterranean vegetation. And then this is the next town. I love Bougainvillea, and there's lots of it there. Of course, Bougainvillea doesn't like cold weather very much. Take a little bit of a freeze, but not much, but gives you a really good idea of what climate, cold temperatures. You won't have Bougainvillea like this in a place that gets 25 degrees very often. So I enjoyed that, took the picture. I walked around this little town, and this is still up in elevation right here. I like these. Just look at this, these rock walls. This is really different from this over. This is probably a lot older than this. Certainly somebody used to live here. Maybe somebody still lives here, but that's pretty steep going up there. So I continued on my way, and this was the next campground near a town called Cargèse. And I stayed here just a night. And interestingly, the fellow who owned the campground, I talked with him quite a bit, very familiar with permaculture. This is his garden. The campground has a big restaurant, and he grows a good deal of the food for the restaurant in this garden and actually employs several people to work on the garden. I saw that nice looking garden. I was pretty impressed. These would all be melons here, Auguri, watermelon. There were peppers, tomatoes, cucumbers, everything we have here, nothing unusual. Gardens seem to be pretty familiar almost anywhere. Everything here was what you would find in a garden in Eugene. He also had a lot of animals. I don't know if any of these that he raised to serve at his restaurant, but there were chickens and horses, and also there were some sheep and llamas. Had lots of different kind of animals here. It was a nice campground. And my space was back here, but here were a couple I met. They were camping and had a really nice chat with them. They were both from France and both spoke pretty good English. So I was able to have a conversation with them. But what they had been doing in Corsica is there are hiking trails, and Corsica, they weren't using a car, they weren't using a bike. They flew to a certain place and they might have taken a bus to get started. But in the interior of Corsica, like I mentioned, it's really pretty rugged and there's not a lot of population. There's towns, but not a lot in the interior. And they have these hiking trails where you might cross roads now and then, but it's pretty wild in a lot of Corsica. And that's what they had been doing for about a week, is to just be out hiking, backpacking essentially, and camping out wherever they were. They said they had an awesome time and they were done with their adventure and they were going to go back to France. But this guy here had actually spent some time in Portland, Oregon. He's a marine biologist and had some business in Portland. So he's kind of a little bit acquainted with the Northwest here. They were both really, really nice. They were from Normandy, the Northwest peninsula of France that kind of sticks out into the Atlantic just south of England. So I left the campground. This is Cargèse. I'd been here before. I'd been all down in here. I didn't do it this time. There's a fig tree. There's oleander. There's bougainvillea. It's really, really pretty. I just like these Mediterranean towns like this. And then this is a little bit further along. This is a tower that dates back like 500 years. And this is what I was looking for because I've been in this tower. It's just out on the ground. You can walk up to. You can go inside there. In the ruins, the leftover what's there of the tower. This was a defensive fortification. I don't know who built this. Certainly, there's history of all about these towers you see periodically along the coastline. But this town you see back here is Sagone, and I had spent some time in Sagone when I was in Corsica before. I actually did some painting at a restaurant, and I stayed in Sagone for about 4 or 5 days and did a lot of volleyball on the beach in the afternoons. And I rode through Sagone. I couldn't recognize really much of anything. It was just different. It was real different. A lot of development new that wasn't there when I was there before. So I couldn't tell. Did I play volleyball there? I couldn't tell if the restaurant was still there, but the tower here is a kind of the iconic structure of Sagone. So a couple, 2 or 3 more hours of bike riding. And I'm also anticipating coming to this place. This is Calcatoggio, and I do have some history in Calcatoggio. Um, this is the actual little village of Calcatoggio up here, and back right in here is a campground that was kind of, I wanted to check on it. I didn't know if I was going to stay there or not this particular night. It was getting to be later in the day. And, but I was very curious to see the campground because I'd stayed in that campground before. I had painted a mural in that campground 40 years ago. It was one of the first murals I ever painted. And I knew that the campground was different. It was owned by somebody else at this point, and they had invested a fair amount of money. I knew the campground looked different because I'd seen it from the road by way of Google. The Google car is all over here too, so I knew there was some changes at the campground. But I'd been on this beach before, and I went down to this beach again, just so pretty. And then eventually I'd have to go uh, back behind these mountains right here, but it turned out that worked out okay. So this is Calcatoggio. You know, I thought I had the map here. I'm going to go back up here and I'm going to do this. I'm going to copy the slide. I did have the slide there, but I want to make sure I show this because this is kind of an important place. Paste. Okay, so this is Calcatoggio here. Um, that previous photo with the sign that said Calcatoggio, that's here. This is the campground where I stayed right here. I did end up staying, I think I stayed 5 days here. It turned out to be a whole lot of fun. This is the campground. Some of the campgrounds, different kinds of campgrounds. You've seen some pictures from some of the campgrounds I was at. Some of them are fancier than others. Some of them are not very fancy at all. This actually is a fairly fancy campground. Look at this view. When I was here before, where you see the swimming pool was a parking lot, and now it's an infinity swimming pool. You go in the pool and there's an edge, and you look off at the med. You're a good deal up above the water here, not so high, but I would imagine you're a good 100 feet. But the Mediterranean is out further. You got to walk about 15 minutes to get to the beach from here. But this is what some of the upgrade is. They changed the name. It's La Casa, the house. Used to be Camping Calcatoggio. So I wanted to connect with the owner just to say, did you ever see the mural that was here before? And just to kind of say, I've spent some time here. I wanted to share a little bit of my history with the new owners. And I eventually did. And while I was waiting for the owner to be there, I was just kind of hanging out. I saw a place that I thought, wow, that would be a really nice spot to do a little bit of a painting. So when I met the owner, Jean Pierre, a really nice guy, um, we started talking about maybe doing a painting, and he said, let me think about that. So I ended up staying there a night, and I started. He arranged for me to be taken care of there, so I had a really nice dinner, uh, courtesy of Jean Pierre. And the next day, after he had talked with his partner, he said, "Okay, your idea is a good idea, but this is what I think I'd rather have." So we went down to into where the campground is, and he showed me this building that he wanted to have a painting done on this building, a very small painting. I told him I didn't want to do anything big. So, so we came upon a plan. We made a plan to do a painting, and but it took a couple of days to get all that together. So I had some time just to sort of goof off, and by this time, I pretty much had carte blanche of the run of the place and the run of the menu for the restaurant as well. So this is one evening. The sun goes down right over the water. Wow. They had some attraction. They had some people singing, I think, uh, Corsican folk songs that night. So this was more people than is usually there. But all the tables were taken. I had a great dinner. Everybody's taking pictures of the sunset. It is just a beautiful view right here. And this is down in the campground. Here's my hammock here. And you don't see very many people actually camping. You see a good number of camper vans, but again, they have these kind of prefab buildings all over the place. They probably had 100 of them here, just like little small, not really like motorhomes, but prefab, uh, not made on site. They just would have brought these in and put them on a level patch of ground and hooked up the utilities. That's what most people stay in when they come to these campgrounds. At all the campgrounds, almost all of them were that way. So it's kind of like a little suburban development, is what it turns out. But this was very up and down. So we got a plan together, and this right here is Gilly. This is Jean Pierre's dog. Gilly is about 11 or 12, not an old dog, but an adult dog, and actually a very cool dog. This was a really neat dog. I liked Gilly, and he just had the run of the place. He just went wherever he wanted. He would get into these chairs. He would jump up in the chair and he would nuzzle the pillow off of the chair to make more room for himself. But what the plan was to do a portrait of Gilly on that wall, on that building. So I was just super stoked to have a project to do. I really like a project. So I got some paper, taped some pieces of paper together. And from the office at the campground, I got a ruler and I got uh, pencils and the material that I needed. What I did was Jean Pierre provided me with a photo of Gilly, and I had to upsize that photo. I am not good enough with drawing just to look at a photo and trace it out on a wall. I could do that and it would look okay, but I wanted it to look really good. So that meant I needed to just use a very simple technique for enlarging the photo into the size I wanted on the wall. So what I'm doing, this is a ping pong table, and I'm using coordinates of different key parts of Gilly's picture, his nose, his tail, his feet, different parts of Gilly. I do coordinates and measurements to lay that all out to have a really accurate drawing of Gilly. And of course, that's what I did. And when I was doing that, lots of people came to see what I was doing at the campground. There are people from all over Europe. I talk with people from Belgium, from France, from Germany, from Italy, all over the place. There's just people, you just don't know where people are from. That's what I really like about Europe. And there's just so many languages. And of course, if you know one language, of course, it's English to know because a lot of people know English. And there were kids who were hanging out watching me do this. It was really a lot of fun. So I had I made my model right there and I traced it out on the wall. And this is the photo and this is the enlargement. This is Gilly looking really in his prime. just this very self-confident dog, and it's a really nice painting. One day, Jean-Pierre and I went to Ajaccio to a big box home store, to get some paint. I just needed minimal amount of paint because this takes literally uh, uh, 10 tablespoons of paint to make this, not even that much. But I brought brushes with me, so I was kind of semi-prepared. But he was really impressed. It turns out he did know about the mural. When he had bought the campground, the mural was still there, and that was only 5 years ago. But in their investments to kind of upgrade the campground, the mural didn't make the upgrade, but uh, but he knew it, and he was amazed when he found out this guy painted that mural. But I had to reassure him I don't paint like that now, because that mural was way early in my mural career, and it was very cartoonish. I don't paint like that anymore, but it was a great laugh when we connected from that angle that I had painted that mural. So this is Gilly, and I can't remember exactly how it's spelled, but if you write the word Gilly in French, it doesn't look anything like how you would spell Gilly in English. It's really funny. I would never know that's how you pronounce it. I don't know French, but it's like Ghislain, it's really different. So I had a good laugh because I wrote all that stuff over here. I said Jean-Pierre wanted me to painting by Jan from Oregon, United States, Gilly, and there he is. So I had just a wonderful time being there. Um, I had a project, and I just really like a project, especially when it's in a place that's kind of exotic, like being there. Uh, this fellow here is the nephew of, I think, the owner's brother or something like that. But this is a summer job, and this woman here is the sister of Jean-Pierre's wife, who is from Ethiopia, and she was really great too. She just brought me whatever I wanted. This was the dessert that I had. I ran through a fair amount of upkeep, but of course, I don't cost them very much because they're just paying for the materials. But I had whatever I wanted on the menu and as much as I wanted. So for about 4 or 5 days, it was like an expense account, and I just had whatever I wanted. And this is kind of a fancy dessert I had, and she was real nice too. And met some other people. This is one of my meals right here. Just awesome salad. Of course, I love pizza. I got tired of having beer, so I started drinking lots of orange juice because I love orange juice as well. And this is part of the restaurant. They had different kinds of activities for kids. Animation is what they call that. I said, what does animation mean? But that's sort of planned, organized activities there at the campground. One night they had karaoke, and I volunteered to do karaoke, and they called on me, and there were like 100 people. This whole area, this area was occupied, and this is where the kind of the stage is. And I did a little karaoke, and when I got up with a microphone in front of everybody, I talked in front of 100 French people, mostly French and Italian. And there were a few Italian people. Probably the French didn't know what I was saying because they don't all speak Italian. But I said I'd been here before, uh, 40 years ago, and I said where the swimming pool is, that used to be a parking lot, and that it was really fun to be here, and I was enjoying myself a lot. And then I sang a song. I don't know why I picked this. The song I sang was Tom Thumb Blues by Bob Dylan, and it's the one that starts out. if you're lost in the rain in Juarez and it's Easter time too, it is just Dylan. But what they gave me to sing with was the music, but it was not the music from the actual song, and it played faster than it's supposed to. So I went through a couple of verses, and it's one of those Dylan songs that's like 10 minutes long. And I did a few verses, and I finally said, I can't, that's enough. I've done enough. Got good applause. It was pretty funny. So this is what it looks like at night. This is the restaurant, and there's lots of kids. This is very family friendly. The pool is over here. I just love being here. This is just one of the highlights of the trip right here. And all these kids, there's a playground and ping pong, and I'm looking at my Wi-Fi, and people are back up here. Just a great time. And I finished the painting, and it was time to go. There's Gilly, there's Jean-Pierre, and he had an errand to do in Ajaccio that we had kind of anticipated. Well, we planned for a couple of days because I told him that as part of my mural painting thing, I would want to get taken to the top of the hill because this was another 1,000-foot climb. So he made his plan to take me not only up the hill, but down into Ajaccio because he had some business to do in Ajaccio. So I was able to take care of that. Darn. Oh, okay. Backtrack. I missed this picture here. Backtrack. There it is. Okay. One of the days I was there, Jean-Pierre and I went up to Calcatoggio to see Walter and Noella. They didn't know. I hadn't seen them in 40 years. They used to own the campground. These are the people who sold the campground to Jean-Pierre. And of course, Jean-Pierre knows where they live. They're like, Walter's like 95, Noella's probably 85. They are in pretty good condition. You know, they're kind of like you read about these places where there's a lot of people 100 years old. They could qualify for this. They're pretty close to it. But we went up to their place and knocked on the door, and they were just like amazed, you know. And so we had a chance to catch up. Um, Walter and Noella speak Italian, so we could kind of catch up in Italian. It was so much fun. We had a beer, and we talked, and um, they seemed to be living pretty well. I'm sure they made a fair amount of money selling the campground, a nice place. They had this big building that had several apartments in it, and their son, who I saw as well and greeted their son, who lives there also. So this is Walter and Noella. That was so much fun to see them again, and they were really totally there. Great fun to check in with them. Great. So okay, Jean-Pierre is taking me up the hill to go to Ajaccio. But one thing that I'm really curious to find out about is this still here? What you see right here, that's a painting. This is a painting. The first mural painting I ever got paid. I actually made money doing this right here. When I'd been here 40 years ago, I went down to the beach and I met some people on the beach, and there was a guy who looked after wind surfing on the beach. I met him. He let me take some windsurfing out. That was a lot of fun. But this is where he lived, and he knew I was making this painting at the campground. He asked me to make a painting for him. So that's what I did. This is the painting, and it's still there 40 years later. I couldn't believe it. So that was really exciting. So we're going into Ajaccio, and this is getting into the urban area. This is a Roman aqueduct right here. You can't see it real well. That's a Roman aqueduct. Just blows my mind just to see out of the blue there's this aqueduct, 2,000 years old, just right there in town. Just amazing. So it's time to go. Here's Jean-Pierre. And I had my bike on his truck. We took the bike off, and he's going to do his errands. And I am going to continue with my bike ride. Really nice guy. He had actually been a journalist earlier in his life. He had lived in Beirut and did some type of lifestyle magazine writing in Beirut, Lebanon. And Beirut, Lebanon became not a place that you wanted to be. So he left, and interesting stories. We had a chance to talk about all this. He told me a little bit about the separatist movement there in Corsica. There are a few people who would like to be their own country. They don't want to be a part of France. So it was great to have these conversations with Jean-Pierre. Really nice guy. Sure enjoyed it. We had a very good time. He took good care of me. So I started out back on the road again. It was very warm. I had hills to go up. I got tired. I sweated. I had stopped in the shade quite a number of times. I am on my way to a town called Propriano, which is where I'm going to stay the night. The next night, we are approaching our time of leaving Corsica. Again, here's the med way down here. I biked and I pushed the bike up this high. I've been up higher than this, but you can see this mirror right here. And this is something of a crossroads. I'm going to Propriano, says right here. This is sort of rural Corsica right here, kind of green. It gets drier the further south you go, especially in Sardinia. You'll see when we do the next two episodes, Sardinia is a lot drier than Corsica right here. So I went to a campground in Propriano and found a place, of course, to put up my hammock. I just stayed a night here. There was no plan to be here for any great length of time. The next morning, I took a bus to Bonifacio, and this is coming into Bonifacio right here because this is Bonifacio down here, and that's where the ferry goes across this little strait to Sardinia, and that's what I'm doing when I left Propriano. This is probably a couple hours. It's not very far, but I didn't want to ride a bicycle on this road, although I'd done that before. I didn't want to do it this time. And then to Bonifacio, and this is part of Bonifacio. Of course, there are some big, 500-year-old fortifications up here. I've been up here before. I didn't go up there this time. I wanted to get on to Sardinia. So this is the boat that goes to Sardinia, and we're out of the harbor. This is Bonifacio up here. The crossing the strait takes about an hour and a half. It's not very far. And you look back and there's Corsica, and I said, I am in Sardinia, because I was very much looking forward to coming to Sardinia. And I would be making my way to Alghero this particular day, and made it to Galura. Gee, what's the name of the town there? But there's a bus station. And of course, this says Aeroporto Alghero. This bus goes to the airport at Alghero, which is probably the biggest airport in northern Sardinia. And the airport's only about 5 or 6 kilometers from Alghero. So I took this bus, put the bike on the bus, and was on my way to Alghero. But that's the end of this episode and the beginning of the next episode. So that's the adventure there in Corsica. I hope you enjoyed that. And I will send out the URL, the notice when the next um, when the next episode is on YouTube. So what I'm gonna do is stop the share, and I'm gonna stop the recording. And until next time, buon viaggio, and hope you enjoyed the story.